access to this centralized model of authority for determining the truth, you're going to give us your money. All right. Now, there are variations. If you want to take those as sort of poles, Wikipedia on one side and Britannica on the other side, what we're going to see is a whole bunch of things showing up in the middle range between these. And perhaps the most famous of these right now is something called Citizendium, which is, would you call it a spin-off, Jimmy? A fork?
They're not forking as far as I know.
All right. So one of the Wikipedia co-founders has decided, no, not a co-founder. He calls himself a co-founder. All right. One of the fellows who calls himself a co-founder of Wikipedia has said, my God, this is anarchy. We've got to do something about it. And went and founded something called Citizendium. And the idea with Citizendium is that, in fact, they're setting up the editorial and peer review policies that are more familiar with perhaps a Britannica. So that really, if you're only recognized as being an authority on a subject, you have editorial authority on a particular entry. Now, that's an interesting approach. They've recently launched in beta. And the problem with that approach is that when you actually end up sort of concentrating authority, even if you've distributed a little bit, but if you concentrate the authority somewhat, it radically slows down the process of knowledge formation. So there's 1,500 articles in Citizendium right now, and there is no entry on Kangaroo. All right. But it represents perhaps a middle, sort of a comfortable middle. And the thing that they're telling you is, well, we're more trustworthy than Wikipedia. Really, we have these processes in place to make us more trustworthy. And time will tell whether they can actually build anything that can rival the fact that Wikipedia is 1,000 times larger and is continuing to grow and has gathered, in a sense, such gravitational force that Citizendium is, in some sense, always going to be trying to catch up to that level of authority and that level of availability that Wikipedia has. But it represents a middle point. Then there's Conservapedia. This is an actual entry for Conservapedia. I did not make this up. Conservapedia believes that the assertion of neutrality, which Jimmy made so much about this morning, is false, and that Jimmy Wales is a big fat pinko. And they believe that there's space on the internet for a different way of telling the truth. And this is not the first paragraph on the Kangaroo in Conservapedia. This is under the section called Origins, in which they describe a creationist methodology for the origin of the kangaroo. And then finally, Uncyclopedia. Now, the thing that I noticed was that the Conservapedia article is funnier than the Uncyclopedia article, even though this one is intentionally funny. And Uncyclopedia has an interesting internal logic. There are several sort of belief systems that weave their way through Uncyclopedia and conspiracy theories, and they all sort of reinforce each other, so that if you entered this universe unawares, you'd find it eerily self-consistent, just like Conservapedia. All right, so we have different types of knowledge representation. And again, anyone can come in and edit Conservapedia. Anyone can come in and edit Uncyclopedia. Anyone can come in, no, not anyone can come in and edit Citizendium. And no one can come in and edit Britannica. So you have this range of different ways of applying the idea of peer production. Either you're going to forbid it entirely, or you're going to be completely open to it. And maybe you're going to be completely open to it, but with a specific intent, organizing that idea of knowledge creation. Now, as I said, I'm a strict constructivist. The basic idea that I understand is encapsulated in this phrase from Maturana and Varela's The Tree of Knowledge, which is a brilliant book sort of about the biology of constructivism. All knowing is doing, and all doing is knowing. What that means is that knowledge acquisition is part and parcel with skills acquisition. And skills acquisition is part and parcel with knowledge acquisition. So when you change the way people come to know things, you change the way people do things. When you change the way people do things, you change the way they know things. So that means that when you drop a thermonuclear weapon like Wikipedia onto the world, you're fundamentally going to change the way people come to know things. You're going to fundamentally change the way people come and do things. And the first thing that that's going to do is it's going to make everyone go, wow, this is just amazing. This is the peace, love, and light scenario. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to piss off every constituency with a stake in holding knowledge back. We've got to understand, at the end of the day, that most elites are based on the idea that knowledge is power. The entire subject of arbitrage is based on the fact that I know something that you don't. And the more that knowledge is distributed, the less an elite has to hold on to power. And therefore, elites will naturally resist that. And that could be a Wall Street elite. It could be an elite in the typing pool. It doesn't matter. Elites form. Elites are just part of the fact that we're primates, and some of us are alphas and some of us are betas. And we make these natural organizations amongst ourselves, and we tend to guard very jealously what we have. So that means that any organization that tries to apply a peer production knowledge sharing technology is going to encounter resistance, perhaps very straightforward, perhaps very diabolical and Machiavellian, from the elites that want to hold that knowledge. The second thing, which I think is adequately shown from the Conservapedia entry, is that special interests work knowledge to their own aims. They try to shape the story that's being told. And of course, you could go completely postmodern on this and say that all knowledge is shaped in that way to tell a particular story. Or you could say, well, maybe there's a consensus view and we can work from that. But those special interests are the people who went off and founded Conservapedia, because they realized that the story that they wanted to tell themselves and their children was not being represented by Wikipedia. And at the same time, you have another tendency. Wikipedia is now so powerful in terms of the internet. It's such a force that communities are starting to become sensitized to the fact that they can knowledge share within themselves. That in fact, that every community, whether of experts or plebeians, has an enormous amount of knowledge latent within them. And I assume that's one of the goals of Wikia, is to be able to sort of free the knowledge that's latent within a particular community. So you have three different forces at work, and these three different forces actually have diametrically opposed goals. So what do you get? It's war. All right? What we're going to see over the next 10 years as pair-produced knowledge sharing becomes more and more widespread, and as it flows now into the schools, because people get very, very upset when it comes to the education of their children, the way their children come to know things and what they come to know, what we're going to see that as pair production becomes a bigger part of the knowledge culture in Australia and in the world, the arguments about what constitutes trust, truth, and authority will become ever more heated. So, when you return to your organizations tomorrow, hopefully filled with lots of great ideas about how to bring knowledge sharing and pair production knowledge sharing strategies into your organization, all I'm asking you is to be aware that these natural barriers, and you don't blame people for them. Elites want to hold their power, special interests want to shape their power, but communities are out there and they're learning how to use that power. And the thing you need to do is figure out how to get in front of it and how to seduce the people who might be disenfranchised or disempowered by the spreading of that knowledge sharing. All right, that's all I wanted to say.